In this video, we're going to explore the idea of this symbol, division. Division is one of the 4 basic operations of arithmetic, but some questions that we have using this symbol sort of confuses us. I don't know if you've seen the same exact problem before, but this thing has been on the internet for quite some time. And frankly, there's still a lot of people on the internet wondering what the answer to this problem is. Is it 1? Is it 16? Is it something else like 7? Jokes aside, 1 and 16 both sort of make sense depending on how you interpret this division symbol, but that's sort of a problem because the whole point of mathematics is to use it as a language or a tool of communication to deliver complex ideas to another person. And we reach a problem when we get 2 different ideas based on one mathematical statement, because then the idea isn't properly communicated. So what's the answer to this question? Let's write our question right here. Now we actually reached 2 conclusions or 2 approaches to this question, where in the first case the division is treated along the number 2. So if we were to add another parenthesis into the equation, it would look something like this. Now from the order of operations, this is pretty simple, fractions first. So simplifying this becomes, and we get the answer is 16. But the other approach is that the division symbol acts across the entire equation. So if we were to add another parenthesis, it would look something like this. Simplifying this, we get, so the answer is 1. At this point, we encounter a large problem. The division symbol on its own doesn't make it clear what the equation is supposed to mean or convey. In other words, if we were to get these 2 equations right here, we would be able to distinguish between which equation or answer we want. But from our original equation, this can be interpreted in both ways, and that makes it so we don't have an obvious answer. And so one could argue that the equation itself is ambiguous and doesn't have one simple solution. And this raises a large problem in the whole concept of math. Mathematics is sort of like a language where you try to use these symbols and definitions to convey an idea to another person. And so an equation having multiple answers or possible interpretations sort of ruins the entire point of the equation. From a mathematician's perspective, this equation itself is practically just wrong on its own. And as much as it is ironic that I am using this as one of my videos, these equations aren't supposed to be what math is truly about. Effective mathematical communication would rather use symbols like fraction to make it clear whether the division symbol acts across the entire 2 plus 2 region or not by writing it in different forms. And by writing it like this, it's clear that the answer is one over the other. So then it is no longer ambiguous. But what about the order of operations, you know? And so instead of having this entire problem about whether the answer is 1 or 16, the correct response is that this equation is wrong entirely. It just wouldn't make sense to use it. And if you're a mathematician that's writing a research paper, you wouldn't want to make any of your equations ambiguous like this. And that's the truth. The answer isn't 1 or 16. The answer really is that it could be either, but because it could be either, this mathematical statement on its own is flawed. And if you want to use something like this, you need to write the equation in a way that makes sense to have one answer chosen over the other. That is, as shown before, writing it in fraction or adding more parentheses. BODMAS or PEMDAS. I really don't know what the correct pronunciation for this is. In case anyone's not familiar with this idea, essentially it's an acronym to remember the order in which operations should be solved. So say starting with P or B, we first must resolve the brackets or parentheses. If you recall our equation from earlier, this would simply be interpreted as 8 divided by 2 times 4. Next we have O or E, order and exponents. And we don't really have this here, so this isn't a problem. The next two is division and multiplication, and the last two is addition and subtraction. The last two are the same exact letters, so we don't really need to consider it here. But then we're left with the D and M in different orders. The truth about this is, however, that division and multiplication are something to be treated together, and so is addition and subtraction. You may have come across this before, but division is sort of equivalent to multiplication, just the number on the right in fraction. And so to be fair, it wouldn't make sense to treat one over the other. But that's not the problem. The truth about division is it's not completely defined which way to answer is correct. Mind your decisions actually covered this before, but by a paper published in 1917, if you have something divided by something, then you put the left side over the right side, so you would get that over that. And if we were to choose 8 divided by 2 times 2 plus 2, then this would be equivalent to having 8 divided by 2 times 2 plus 2. But instead, you may have learned that when you have division and multiplication together as the only things left, the correct way to approach it is to start from the left to the right. And one final thing I would want to mention, as a self-proclaimed mathematician, I would personally never write this kind of equation, and I would stick to using a fraction instead. And it sort of ruins the purpose or potential that mathematics has to offer to society if a person not in the maths field takes these kind of questions as their own understanding of what mathematics is. And it sort of makes me sad that this is the impression that many of us have towards mathematics, simply as something like a puzzle. And so, if you're someone that just stumbled by this video and isn't really into mathematics, I think it would be a great opportunity to learn that this isn't representative of mathematics and that problems like these are extremely important to think about, but at the end the answer is that this equation doesn't have a correct solution. So similar to any other subject like the languages, it should be made clear what the context or the correct interpretation is. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching.